They say a parent's love is unconditional, a boundless ocean of sacrifice and devotion. And for 45 years, I truly believed that. I poured my heart, soul, and every spare penny into making sure my two children, my daughter Claire and my son David, had the best lives possible. I'm a retired school principal, and my late husband, bless his soul, was a civil engineer. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable, and we always made a point of valuing family and shared experiences above material things. We instilled in our children the importance of hard work, respect, and humility. Or so I thought. Fast forward to 6 months ago. After years of meticulous saving and planning, I finally achieved a lifelong dream. I bought the country house. It was a charming, old stone farmhouse nestled in the rolling hills about 2 hours from the city. It had 5 acres of land, a small stream running through the back, and the most breathtaking view you could imagine. It wasn't just a house. It was my sanctuary, my retirement project, my peaceful haven after decades of bustling schools and city noise. I had poured even more money into essential renovations, new plumbing, a modernized kitchen, and turning the dilapidated barn into a cozy studio for my painting hobby. It was perfect. I was finally starting my second act, alone but content. I had been in the house for exactly 4 days, still surrounded by boxes, but reveling in the quiet country air, when the phone rang. It was Claire. Now, let me tell you about Claire. She's my eldest, a beautiful woman, a successful lawyer, married to a man, Mark, who is also doing very well financially. They live a lavish, fast-paced life in the city, the kind of life I always thought was a bit too much, but I was proud of her success. However, over the years, Claire had developed a certain expectation, an assumption that my resources, my time, and now, apparently, my property, were all extensions of her convenience. David, on the other hand, my younger son, is much more grounded. A kindergarten teacher, happy with his simpler life, and always respectful. But this call was from Claire. I answered, excited to tell her how wonderful the fresh air was. Hi, sweetie. Guess what I just finished unpacking the antique bookcase? It looks... I started, but she cut me off immediately, her voice loud, rushed, and utterly devoid of any greeting or genuine interest in my life. Mom, listen to me. You have to hear this. I'm calling from the car. She barked into the phone. We're on the highway, and we just passed the exit for the countryside. We're going to be there in an hour, maybe less. So you need to get things ready. I paused, confused. We? Who is we? Claire. And what are we getting ready for? My initial confusion quickly gave way to a prickle of annoyance. She hadn't asked if she could visit. She had simply announced her imminent arrival. Don't be silly, Mom. The whole group. My firm's annual summer retreat. Remember? I told you about it weeks ago. Well, the reservation at the lake house just fell through. Total disaster. So I offered your place. It's perfect. Huge, private, and that yard looks amazing for a barbecue. The antique bookcase I'd just unpacked almost slipped out of my grasp. My heart began to pound, not with excitement, but with genuine panic and disbelief. Wait a minute, Claire. The whole group? How many people are we talking about? I asked, my voice rising. Oh, not that many. 20 or so, she said, so casually, as if she were announcing she'd pick up a gallon of milk. 20 people, Claire? In an hour? And you offer my house? The house I just moved into? The house that still has boxes everywhere and only 2 proper guest rooms? You didn't even ask me. You didn't consult me, your mother, the actual owner of the property. What on earth made you think that was okay? Her tone immediately shifted from hurried casual to sharp, icy defense. Mom, don't be dramatic. What's the big deal? It's a huge house, and I know you don't use it for anything yet. It's just for the weekend. It's an emergency. Besides, this is important for my career. Mr. Harrington, the senior partner, is coming. If I pull this off, it'll be huge for my promotion. This is family helping family, Mom. It's an investment in my success. You're retired. What else were you doing? Painting? Her dismissive attitude towards my time, my new home, and my personal boundaries was breathtakingly audacious. It was the epitome of the expectation I had come to recognize and dread. The fact that she was leveraging my new home, my sanctuary, for her career gain, without a word of consent, was a monumental act of disrespect. The shock of the situation was quickly replaced by a cold, hard anger that settled deep in my bones. I looked around my quiet living room, at the few unpacked treasures, at the still-drying paint on the studio floor, and felt a wave of violation. My peaceful retirement had been hijacked, weaponized, and turned into a corporate event venue without my permission. And she had the nerve to say, "What's the big deal?" I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to regain my composure. "Claire, you need to turn the car around right now," I said, my voice low and firm, the voice I used to use when addressing a misbehaving student in my office. "I am not hosting your firm's retreat. I have not prepared for this. The house is not ready. There are no beds for 20 people, there is no food, and I am not your free venue manager. This is my home, not a hotel or a corporate event space." The response I got was not one of apology or understanding. It was a tirade of outrage and entitlement. "Are you serious right now, Mom? Are you actually going to ruin this for me? After all I've done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Claire?" I interrupted, my control finally snapping. "I've been supporting you your entire life. I paid for your college, I helped with your first apartment, and I've always been here for you. And this is how you repay me? By treating me like your property, like an afterthought, and my home like a glorified camping ground? Turn the car around, Claire. You have an hour to find a new plan, because you and your 20 guests are not welcome here." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line, followed by a piercing shriek of fury. "You are unbelievable, Mom. Selfish. You're going to sabotage my career. You're an awful, terrible mother. You're just jealous of my success." She hung up before I could respond, leaving me standing in the middle of my living room, the phone hot in my hand, staring out at the beautiful, peaceful hills that now felt completely tainted. 20 people. In an hour. The shock of her audacity still vibrated through me, but now it was compounded by the devastating hurt of her final words. Awful, terrible mother. Was I, though? Was I wrong to finally put my foot down, to defend the one space I had created just for myself? Should I have just swallowed the massive imposition, the expense, the violation of my privacy, just to facilitate her career advancement? I immediately called David, my son, and relayed the entire frantic, unbelievable exchange. He was shocked, but not surprised. "That's typical Claire, Mom," he said softly, a familiar weariness in his voice. "She sees the world, and everyone in it, as a resource for her. Don't worry, Mom. I'll be there in 2 hours. Just lock the doors, don't answer. We'll figure this out." His support was a lifeline, a warm anchor of sanity in the swirling chaos. I had about 50 minutes before they were due to arrive. I was still shaking, but David's calm voice had given me a focus. The climax of this confrontation was about to happen right on my doorstep, and I needed to be ready. I knew Claire. She wouldn't just turn around and go home. She would argue. She would cajole. She would try to use guilt and emotional manipulation to force her way in. She'd probably even try to appeal to my motherly duty in front of her important senior partner. I would not let that happen. The first thing I did was exactly what David said. I locked every door and every window, checked the garage, and secured the gate at the end of the long, winding driveway. The property was large, and I knew they couldn't just walk up and barge in without me letting them through the main access. I wasn't just locking them out. I was establishing a physical, undeniable boundary that she had clearly failed to recognize. Then, I sat down and started to process the deeper betrayal. This wasn't just about a weekend stay. This was the culmination of years of her taking, and giving very little respect in return. Her entire life, she had benefited from my quiet sacrifices, and now, as an adult, she felt entitled to simply commandeer my biggest, most personal investment. This wasn't a child throwing a tantrum. This was a successful, grown woman attempting to use her mother as a means to an end, with zero regard for my well-being or my boundaries. The awful, terrible mother comment, the casual destruction of my private life, it all solidified my resolve. I wouldn't let her step one foot onto the property. I didn't want the 20 people on my land, not just because the house wasn't ready, but because I knew their presence would be a physical embodiment of her disrespect, a permanent stain on my sanctuary. As the clock ticked down, I moved the few visible valuables off the main floor and into a secure closet. I then positioned myself in the large living room, which had a wide bay window that overlooked the driveway. I needed to see them coming. I needed to be ready for the inevitable confrontation. And I needed to make sure I looked absolutely unmoved. I actually went and changed out of my unpacking clothes and into a nice, crisp blouse. I even put on lipstick. I wanted to look like the strong, dignified woman who had just established her boundaries, not the frantic, tired woman she had tried to bulldoze. I was waiting, prepared, when I saw the first car pull up to the gate. It was a massive, black SUV, quickly followed by another, and then another, until there was a line of luxury vehicles blocking my driveway entrance. It was a parade of corporate entitlement, and my daughter was leading the charge. Claire stepped out of the first SUV, and I could see her clearly through the window. She was dressed impeccably, her perfect lawyer's suit looking completely out of place in the rustic setting. She was on her phone, clearly talking to someone, probably Mark, her husband. Her face was a mask of cold fury and professional distress. She walked up to the iron gate, which was firmly locked with a heavy chain I'd bought specifically for security. She rattled the gate once, hard, and then finally looked up at the house, straight at my window. She couldn't see me clearly, but she knew I was there. She lowered the phone and took a few steps closer to the gate, cupping her hands around her mouth. "Mom, I know you're in there. Open the gate. This is ridiculous. You're going to make a scene in front of Mr. Harrington." I didn't move. I kept my face expressionless, a blank slate of polite disapproval. This was my moment. This was the opportunity she had so foolishly created for me. She was forcing the confrontation, not just on me, but in front of 20 of her most important professional peers. The silent power I held by simply standing there, looking out my window, refusing to move, was immense. The crowd behind her was starting to mill about, looking curious and confused, their weekend retreat already going sideways. I saw a distinguished-looking, older man, who I presumed was Mr. Harrington, step out of his car, looking utterly bewildered by the spectacle of the locked gate and the shouting woman. Claire was still shouting, her voice cracking with a mixture of anger and rising desperation. "Mom, don't do this. I swear, you will regret this. This is so important. Just for the weekend. We'll clean up. We'll pay for the food." It was too late. The offer of payment, the promise to clean, now sounded pathetic and insincere. A belated, coerced attempt to bribe her way into my good graces. I walked slowly and deliberately to the door, opened the window just a crack, enough for my voice to carry, but not enough for her to feel like she had any kind of opening, and spoke. My voice was calm, clear, and perfectly enunciated. "Claire," I said, addressing her like a wayward student, "this is my home. You do not have permission to be here. You violated my trust and my boundaries by attempting to commandeer my private property for a corporate event without my consent. I told you on the phone that you are not welcome. I will not be manipulated or coerced." I paused, letting my words sink into the stunned silence of the 20 onlookers. Then, I spoke directly to the group, making sure my voice was loud enough for them all to hear, especially the senior partner who was watching the scene unfold with an expression of professional horror. "To the rest of you," I continued, "I apologize for this unfortunate situation. This property is private, and it is not available for rental or events. I suggest you ask the person who invited you here, without the owner's permission, to find an immediate alternative location. Have a pleasant weekend." And with that, I closed the window, walked back to my couch, and sat down. I picked up a book I had been meaning to read and pretended to immerse myself in the pages. I could still hear the faint, Muffled sounds of Claire's increasingly hysterical shouts, the sharp, angry tone of her husband, Mark, who had joined her at the gate, and the low, murmuring confusion of the corporate retreat attendees. The show was over, and I had won the opening act. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the book unread in my lap, listening to the commotion slowly subside. Claire continued to argue and plead at the gate for another 15 minutes, her voice escalating to a near-screeching level. I heard Mark trying to pull her away, clearly embarrassed by the spectacle she was creating in front of his firm's senior partners. Finally, after a short, sharp exchange between Claire and Mr. Harrington, which I could only imagine was a career-ending rebuke, the sound of car doors slamming and engines revving filled the air. One by one, the luxury SUVs turned around and drove away, leaving a silence that was more profound and peaceful than before. I walked back to the window. The driveway was empty. The gate was still locked. My boundary was intact. An hour later, David arrived, pulling his old sedan up to the now open gate. He walked in, took one look at my perfectly composed appearance, and burst out laughing. "You didn't even go outside, did you, Mom?" he asked, hugging me tightly. "You just sat here and watched the show." "That's incredible." "I didn't need to go out," I replied, a small, weary smile finally appearing on my face. I had already stated my boundary. Any further interaction would have only given her a platform for more manipulation. David stayed the night, helping me unpack and finally allowing me to relax. We ordered pizza, sat on the floor, and he repeatedly reassured me that I had done the right thing. He completely understood that this wasn't just about a weekend. It was about the culmination of years of disrespect. He saw the situation for what it was, an attempted coup of my personal life and property. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have let them in and swallowed the humiliation, or would you have stood your ground, risking the complete destruction of your relationship with your daughter? The aftermath was exactly what I expected, and yet, somehow, even worse. Claire did not contact me immediately to apologize. There was no contrite phone call, no text message expressing regret for her colossal mistake. Instead, I received a torrent of aggressive, emotionally abusive messages. Her first text, sent late that night, was simply, "You have ruined my life. I will never forgive you for this. Hope you enjoy your pathetic little house." The rest of the messages that followed over the next week were a mixture of intense guilt-tripping and outright verbal assault. She accused me of actively trying to sabotage her career out of jealousy for her success, claiming I resented her for having the life I never could. She accused me of elderly selfishness and betrayal. She even dragged my late husband into it, claiming he would have been ashamed of my behavior. The cruelty of it was shocking, but it only strengthened my resolve. Her reaction confirmed that this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a character flaw that I had enabled for too long. David, bless his heart, became my unofficial shield. He called her, attempting to reason with her, but she simply turned her fury on him, accusing him of siding with me against her, and even threatening to cut him out of her life. He eventually had to block her number, stating, "I can't talk to you until you apologize to Mom. What you did was unforgivable." My friends and a few close family members were equally divided. My sister, who had always been a little too willing to placate Claire, initially suggested I should have just let them stay, to keep the peace. But when I explained the full extent of the 20-person invasion, the lack of notice, the career pressure, and the verbal abuse, even she was forced to admit that Claire had gone too far. My friends, however, were universally supportive, appalled by her entitlement. They rallied around me, helping me unpack the rest of my boxes and making the house feel truly like home. But the real, tangible consequences were only just beginning to unfold. A few weeks later, I heard through David that Claire had, in fact, faced serious professional repercussions. The failed retreat, the spectacle at my gate, and her subsequent handling of the disaster had been a major embarrassment for her firm, especially in front of Mr. Harrington. She was passed over for the promotion she had been banking on, and worse, She was sidelined on a major case. Her attempt to leverage my home for her career had backfired spectacularly, causing her a significant professional setback. While a small, dark part of me felt a flicker of satisfaction that she was finally facing consequences for her actions, the overwhelming feeling was sadness. Sadness that her lack of humility and respect had cost her so much, and sadness that it had irrevocably damaged our relationship. The true climax of the aftermath came a month later. I received a certified letter from her lawyer. I felt my stomach clench, expecting some kind of legal action, maybe a frivolous lawsuit for emotional distress or slander, knowing Claire would try any desperate measure. I immediately called Ms. Jenkins, my own lawyer who specialized in property law. When the letter arrived, I opened it with her on the phone. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a formal, yet incredibly terse apology. It acknowledged that she had erroneously and without permission attempted to utilize my mother's private property and unreservedly apologized for the resulting distress and professional inconvenience. It was clearly written by her lawyer to mitigate any potential future legal exposure, but the final, shocking clause was this: she was formally and permanently severing all financial and legal ties with me, including withdrawing herself as a beneficiary in my current will and renouncing any future claim to my estate. She wanted nothing more to do with me or my assets. Ms. Jenkins was silent for a moment after I read the entire document aloud. "Maria," she finally said, "that is highly unusual. It's a very dramatic step, one that clearly comes from a place of immense pride and anger. But legally, it's also a gift. It removes any potential for her to challenge your will later or contest anything in your estate. She has, in essence, professionally disinherited herself. And the apology, however forced, is an admission of guilt." I hung up the phone feeling lighter than I had in months. Claire's final, desperate act of spite, cutting herself off from my inheritance, was actually a profound relief. It was the final, definitive boundary. She had chosen pride, anger, and professional convenience over family, and now she was paying the ultimate price. She had lost her mother. My relationship with David, however, flourished. The incident brought us closer than ever before. He saw the true extent of his sister's toxic entitlement and realized how much I needed his support. He now comes out to the country house almost every other weekend, and we work on the old barn studio together, turning it into a beautiful space. We have long, peaceful conversations, and his easygoing, humble nature is a refreshing balm to my soul. I've since updated my will, making David the sole executor and primary beneficiary. He was hesitant, of course, feeling it was unfair to Claire, but I explained to him that Claire had already made her choice, and that my will was simply reflecting the reality of our current relationship. I told him, "A mother's love is unconditional, but a mother's trust must be earned." And Claire chose to break that trust completely. Today, the country house is truly my sanctuary. The view is still breathtaking, the stream still runs in the back, and the quiet is a constant comfort. I'm finally painting again, filling the newly renovated studio with light and color. I often think about that frantic hour, the line of luxury SUVs, and Claire's shrieking voice at my gate. It was a moment of immense pain and betrayal, but it was also a moment of immense clarity and liberation. I stood up for myself, defended my home, and in doing so, I rediscovered my own strength and self-worth. I learned that setting a boundary isn't just about protecting your time or your property. It's about protecting your soul. It's about teaching people, even your own children, how they are allowed to treat you. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from someone who continuously refuses to respect the boundaries you've established. So I was right. I wasn't the awful, terrible mother. I was simply a mother who finally realized that she deserved to live her own life, on her own terms, in the home she had worked a lifetime to buy. I put myself first, and in the end, it was the best thing I could have ever done. If you've been in a similar situation, having to choose between your own peace and someone else's convenience, let my story be your guide. Like this video if you were on my side, and believe a parent has the right to their own boundaries. Subscribe for more stories like this where people finally stand up for themselves. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comment section. I truly want to know if you think I handled that final confrontation at the gate correctly. I'll see you all in the next story.